Peace. So today's mathematics is knowledge, wisdom, all drawn up to its highest is understanding. So in other words, today is the 12th, which is 1 and 2. In the same way that 1 and 2 equals 3, knowledge and wisdom equals understanding. I would say that one of the most important lessons that I've learned just along my journey of personal growth and development and interpersonal growth and development is it's better to understand than to expect being understood. And I say that because sometimes our expectations can be very unreasonable. We may expect that a person has or doesn't have a certain level of knowledge and wisdom, and then expect them to understand what it is that we're striving to share. And that's something that I consistently emphasize on my channel, just the importance of making sure that we share very practical examples of how our supreme mathematics or how our cultural elements work. Because the 5%ers, sometimes, like I mentioned, we can come across very cryptic and abstract with this unreasonable expectation that people are going to grasp what it is that we're saying. So for example, today being knowledge, wisdom, or the 12th, some people may say stuff like, knowledge is my foundation. That's to look, listen, observe, and respect. And that's the manifestation of, my wisdom in motion, because that's the way. And that helps bring forth a clear mental picture so people can see things for what they are, not what they appear to be. But it's like, what does that mean? Like, how does that work? Slow down, first of all, and give us a practical example of knowledge being your foundation. Tell us what knowledge was your foundation. What was your experience? And how did that lead to wisdom being a way for you to gain an understanding? Stories move people, not the rhetoric and the cryptic talk and the abstract things that we do with this language, right? And I'm very clear on striving to consistently emphasize with my listening and viewing audience that this is a very practical way of life in terms of our culture. And it's simplistic. It's very simplistic. And the irony of it is the same people who talk like that will say that they're being simple. And that's not simple at all. I mean, when you look across the country, the average reading level of an American is a 6th grade reading level. And that's just average across the board. Now, when you get into areas and geographic locations where you have a lack of educational resources, or you have a chronic scarcity of those type of resources in other different areas, then you're going to see that reading level even lower than a 6th grade level, somewhere around 3rd grade reading level. And if we're not taking that into consideration, then we run the risk of being more of a liability for people than an actual asset. So one of the things that I've learned is I remember having bills with people, and I'm going on and on and on, and I'm taking it to here, talking about astrology and astronomy and paleontology and arithmetic and algebra, and I'm doing all of this stuff, and they sitting there listening, and they nodding their head, looking like a deer caught in the headlights. And they weren't getting anything that I was saying. And here's the thing. I've also learned this as an educator, working with students from pre-K all the way up to college age, that a lot of times people will not stop you and just ask a question for clarity. If you're using words that they've never heard before, the average person is not going to stop you and say, what's that word mean? I don't understand what that word means. Or could you hold on for a second? I don't understand that. Could you explain that to me again? Most people don't do that. They just sit there and nod their head and eventually think that they could fake it until they make it. Right? And the unfortunate part about that is sometimes people do that because they've had traumas associated with their academic experience. And people may not ask questions because they may be egotistical or self-important. Or sometimes people are just flat out embarrassed because they don't want to seem like they're stupid or dumb. Because maybe going through school is something that they didn't get. And instead of them just asking a teacher, they just sit and just shrink in the sight of everybody. Or they may have had an experience where they asked a question and then the classmates clowned them. So they made a decision, I ain't going to ask no questions no more. So one way to address that is we have to be more patient we have to be more considerate of people in terms of them gaining an understanding. And the way that we do that practically is we have to pace ourselves. One thing that I do is if I'm building about something, I stop every now and then. I stop periodically and ask questions. Does that make sense to you? Well, how does it make sense to you? Do you understand that? Tell me how you understand that, or put what I just said in your own words. I take time and I'm patient and considerate like that to make sure that we're on the same page, so I'm not just flipping through the pages in this book of life and leaving people behind. So it's important to be patient and considerate like that, and to pace ourselves and to make sure that we're on the same page, because that's a real investment in understanding. That is an example of knowledge and being wise in how we invest in others. So this was inspiring, it was empowering, it was educational. It just gave those of you some insight into understanding, and then also why we say it's the best part. It's the best part because it requires a level of investment, not only in ourselves, but in others, that ensures that as they gain their understanding, or as they begin to see things for what they are, not what they appear to be, then that equal understanding that we hold allows us to have a sense of equality and equity. Now, what do I mean by that? 3 and 3 equals 6. The same way that understanding and understanding equals equality. So, peace.